Sounds good. We are at 9 o'clock, Bill, so I am going to get us started. Xavier, let me know when we're live.
We are live.
Terrific. Good morning. My name is Tina Shah. I am hearing an echo, and so maybe if everyone can make sure they're mute. Good morning. Okay, I only hear myself now. My name is Tina Shah. I'm a senior analyst at the Kansas Health Institute. This morning, we have Working Group A, which is the Quality of Care and Protective Services Working Group convened by the Senior Care Task Force. This is your last meeting before you ratify your report, and the goal of this meeting is to tier your recommendations. I'm going to share your agenda briefly. And the goal, again, as I said, is to tier your recommendations. A reminder of the meeting commitments: to come ready to discuss and compromise. Keep your remarks succinct and on topic. Don't hesitate to ask clarifying questions, and start and end on time. And just to ground everyone, your vision statement is older Kansans will have access and the ability to choose and receive high quality, person-centered services wherever they reside. So definitely keep this top of mind as you are working through trying to figure out how you would like to tier your recommendations. Because we have a short meeting this morning, only an hour, I'm not going to go through introductions. However, I will remind you when you speak, please announce your name at least and your organization so that those that are watching on YouTube or other services know who is speaking at that time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill. If you would like to say any words to the group, and then I will start us with the exercise.
Nothing specific. I just appreciate your work. I think we'll get a lot done today, and we need to narrow our focus, and I'll be relying on each one of you to help do that. Thanks, Hina.
Thank you. So definitely keep that vision statement in mind. I'm going to share my screen again, and it's going to go to that large table that was at the end of your recommendations list that basically had the scoring for each of your recommendations, along with whether it's strategically important or immediate action, and just a reminder of those terms. Immediate action is something that could get done pretty quickly, maybe in the next year or two. Strategic importance is something that is really important to do, but you'd have to lay the groundwork for a year or two, and then it would be fully implemented for about 3 to 5 years. So it'll take a little longer, but you could get the ball rolling. So knowing that, some of the tiers have been completed through surveys and other mechanisms. And so what I first wanted to do is just have you guys go through and call out what tier you think that each recommendation should be. If you don't have the recommendation list in front of you and would like to see that recommendation again, I can easily tab back and forth and show you that recommendation. Otherwise, it's good to have that recommendation list handy as we're going through this exercise. For now, you can show me fingers if you want, like 2, 1, 3. You can call it out. Don't feel like you have to raise your hand to tell me which tier. So with that, just kind of initial reactions first, and then we can talk through and negotiate and compromise how you would like to put each recommendation into tier. So from the survey, the first one is that statewide aging conference. From your last meeting, the focus of this is more on action planning and collaborating than on education only and networking. And so it's really getting the groups, all the stakeholders together to really think through what should be done next for the state. So this is something that's strategically important, is what I was told. By survey, you can always change this. So it would take maybe a year or two to get, the conference, arranged. And then maybe year 3, the conference would actually occur. Let me know if you agree with that or not, or if this is more immediate action, like it could happen next year. And then take a look at ease of implementation and potential for impact, and if you agree with the tier of 2. So starting with the first, do you agree that it's still strategically important, or do you think it's more immediate action and could happen right away?
Hina, Bill Persinger here. I'll sure defer to mainly to the whole group, of course, but those professionals working in the field of gerontology and any different capacity, advocates, family members, I'd sure step back and go with their comments on this.
Thoughts? Go ahead, Ernie.
Ernie Cutzley, ARP Kansas. And I see this as a continuation of this exercise with these groups, the working group and the subgroup. So I think the longer you put it off, the more apt it is to lose its, yeah. Anyway, so I would think it would be more critical to try to start as soon as possible.
Do others agree to change this to immediate action? All right, I'm seeing agreement. So your ease of implementation score was about a 7 because it's been historically done, was kind of the rationale behind that. Potential for high impact was a 5 because it was kind of toying between whether it's just education and networking versus action planning. Knowing that you've changed this more to an action planning recommendation, do you have any changes in your scores?
This is Camille, State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and I think because we are trying to move things forward and create change, that it might have the potential for more impact than what an ongoing conference did in the past, possibly.
With that, what would you propose?
Yeah,
I'm seeing a
7.
7. Okay. Or an 8. All right, I saw 2 8s and 2 7s. Thoughts? Can't do any half here.
Bill Persinger here. I have, seen a couple of conferences lately, one in the area of criminal justice reform, as a matter of fact, create a great foundation for change. Some of it immediate, some of it long-term, but I would agree with Camille, and I'd sure support an 8.
Okay. All right, and then is it still tier 1, tier 2, or would you like to change it to tier 1 or 3? Tier 1? Am I seeing it? Tier 2? Tier 1? Okay, tier 1. All right, tier 1. Once we see the full list, I will tell you that we should try to limit tier 1s to no more than 1 per topic. This is your cross-cutting, so you are allowed 1 there. The second recommendation is that new person-centered practices one. Again, let me know if you need to see it again. This is one that was also for immediate action. Implementation was fairly easy at an 8 and high impact at a 10. How would you tier this one?
This is Camille, the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and I'm a bit of a rule breaker, so I'm going to say that we should have tier 1 in this one, even against your recommendation that we only have level 1 in each area.
That's okay. I think a few working groups said, aren't the cross-cutting recommendations all tier 1 because they're cross-cutting? And so I think I will go to the will of the task force and their decision on that. So any objections to tier 1? Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Persinger, I'm not opposed. Certainly, I think, Camille is right on. If, we could, just for the sake of conversation, just have, the conference as our tier 1, because a major theme of the conference could be the person-centered practices. And, that way we can keep it highlighted, Camille and others, and not let it drag. But I certainly, been known to break a few rules here and there, but, if we're going to do that, we do it for a good cause. If we can stick to Hina's plan for just 1 per bold, italic there, the gray bar, I'd appreciate it. So if we could just talk about this a little bit more, but definitely Camille and others, let's look at making those person-centered practices maybe our overriding theme at a statewide conference. Let's keep it right there in front of the people.
So are you proposing, Bill, to have the conference as 1, person-centered practices as 2, but then the statewide conference focus on person-centered practices so those downstream effects percolate?
Very well said. Much more succinct. Yes, Hina. That's what I'm proposing.
Thoughts from the group?
This is Camille, and I just have to say we're going to have a limited audience at a statewide aging conference. And person-centered practices is something that just really needs to be occurring in all disciplines and all locations and all places. And so I do think that conference would absolutely be a communication point for that, but again, limited to the people that attend that. So how else do we do it otherwise? So I have some concerns about us not having that be an overarching. Actually, our vision statement is about
Yes.
that. So
Go ahead, Jan. You're on mute.
The idea is apparently person-centered practices is a new idea to some people who may be coming to the statewide aging conference. So it seems to me that the focus, the attention with the new phrasing might get, you know, some additional people to come or to pay attention. And it's not just one of those old things being drug up, you know, where it's a new focus and here's the focus and boom, boom, boom. I wouldn't want to see person-centered practices as a two. It's if they can't co-share, I don't, you know, it seems to me we have to be driving the point home, cross-cutting, that these are person-centered we're talking about, and this is a change for a lot of people, and that's why I think it needs a one.
Are you comfortable, Bill, with keeping it one? I have no objections to that as long as you guys are all comfortable with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Bill Person here. My comments were mainly meant to, you know, keep the conversation going and dig in just a little bit and not just automatically go, hey, everything's going to rise to the top, because it can't. And I do appreciate the discussion. So.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to move us on to your first topic then of study, the administration of antipsychotics. So you have two recommendations here. One is the geriatric psychiatric prescribers related, and the other one's on psychotropic medication education. And so your first one, again, is immediate action, implementation at a 6, and high impact at an 8. And per the survey, it was a tier 1. Do you agree with keeping it a tier 1, or do you think it's a tier 2 or 3? I'm seeing some nods that you agree to keeping it at a tier 1. Your second one is related to education. This is more strategically important. It'll take some time to kind of get those materials together, standardized. So implementation was a little tougher at 5, but still a high impact at 7. Are you comfortable with keeping this at tier 2, or would you like to move it to 1 or 3? Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, I'm seeing thumbs ups and 2s. Terrific. All right, your next topic is safeguards to prevent abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We have a few of these to kind of fill out, so let me know if you need to look at the whole recommendation again. The first one, though, is related to your workforce clearinghouse. So remember, this is that clearinghouse, including kind of the direct care registries and a coordinator position between DCF, KDADS, and KBI, just to make sure there's more oversight and that caregivers in the facilities can refer to a resource, you know, when they have a question about hiring. So it's that clearinghouse there. That one was more strategic importance because it would take some time to kind of build that clearinghouse. It is collaboration and coordination between 3 state agencies, and so that's why ease of implementation was scored at a 3. The high impact, though, was at 9, and so the survey had it tiered as 1. Taking a look at your recommendations, do you agree with that staying at tier 1, or would you like to put it at tier 2 or 3?
Ina, Bill Persinger here.
Sure.
So I'm very focused here on all of these. I'm just holding back on comments. I, you know, sure want the professionals, the people that work in this area, you know, to have plenty of time to comment. So don't take my silence as lack of interest.
Appreciate it. Others? Keep it 1 for now, or 2 or 3? All right, the next one is on background checks. Your background check recommendation was on increasing funding for KBI to perform more comprehensive background checks. So going beyond just criminal convictions and adjudications, making sure they're timely, and then not having, prohibiting direct care until the background check results are available. So not having staff provide that direct care until it's done. Is this something that could be done right away, immediate action, or do you think it'll take a couple years to really get this going? So let's start there.
Ina, Bill Persinger here. I do think the sooner the better on this. I'm not sure that, budget wise, that's something that can be done, given the legislature adjournment and all of that, and what flexibility that, KBI or a larger department may have. But I can tell you, as a behavioral health care nonprofit employer, speedier background checks would be outstanding. I'm not saying don't do a good job, but I know they do need more resource at times. They are overwhelmed by maybe large contracts that come along. So I'd sure support that as a behavioral health nonprofit employer.
So I'm hearing more immediate action, maybe the next legislative session or two, to think about the funding behind that.
Well, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. And so knowing the ease of implementation is a 5 and a high impact is an 8, how would you tier this one?
Bill Persinger again here. If there's money in their, state fiscal 23 budget, I'd find some way to, communicate the importance of that for immediate action. But if immediate action has to be some special funding, through the budget process next year, that's just the way it is. But, I think this is something we can get done fairly soon. So how we rank it on the right side of the chart is, I'll just pull back and let folks comment.
Thoughts? You can show me fingers. 1, 2, 3. I'm seeing some 1s and 2s.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll keep it at 1 or 2 for now, and then you can take a look at where it falls in the chart. All right, abuse, neglect, and exploitation training. So this is developing A&E training for person-centered practices. And so this is providing it to like the public and law enforcement and mandatory reporters, communicating like those dementia certificate programs. You asked to require at least 3 hours of CEs for nursing facility staff. And then you also wanted to ensure trauma-informed person-centered policies for seniors or older adults who have experienced A&E or being followed. So with this one, is this something that will take some time to develop that training, or is that training already available that you could leverage?
This is Camille, long-term care ombudsman, and I believe those trainings exist. I believe multiple entities are able to do those trainings. I think how we get the recipients engaged is the difficult part. Even though it's a required thing, it is very hard to get them engaged and attend and then put those that training into action. So it needs to happen. Just this week, I can't tell you how many calls we got that would go to us understanding that the employees in those facilities do not understand their obligation to report. So it's important, needs done everywhere, and it's the facilities are supposed to be doing it. So what we can put in place to support that happening is probably critical to A&E.
So it sounds like since there is existing training you can leverage, this is more of an immediate action task that could take place in the next year or two, since you're not developing something from scratch. Am I capturing that correctly? And then with a score of 5, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Rachel Perner, and I think, Camille, to be the other bookend on the shelf, I think that training exists for law enforcement also.
Yes.
And so, whether it's Johnson County or the AG's office or Sedgwick County that starts sharing that, and I too agree that with the immediate action, I mean, we've got to get the folks trained from the DAs to the law enforcement. And I think the framework's there.
So do you think you need to change, maybe should develop to should promote, if the language is already there, or is it still honing all of the training and coming up with one standardized training for everyone? I just want to make sure your language is reflecting what you're saying.
Bill Persinger, how about should promote, should further develop and promote? Maybe we can capture the best of both without being too wordy.
Everyone comfortable with that language? Okay. All right. Then I'll go back up and taking a look at this. How would you tier this? 1, 2, or 3? You can put up fingers again. where we have to prioritize our priorities.
Wait, I think this is really important. This is Rachel Herner again. I think this is really important because, I mean, we can't get to prevention if we don't have the people on the front lines trained to look for the potential crimes.
Hina, Bill Persinger here, and I sure don't disagree with that. Though there are some trainings already in place, and I was maybe thinking that what might rise to a level 1 or 2 might be things that are not in place, that are doable. But, you know, I don't put that up as a vigorous argument against a 1. I'm just, you know.
Yeah, Bill. Rachel, again, I hear what you're saying. The problem is that I think the training is really localized. I mean, I expect our Wichita Police Department to be trained, but if you go out to Ness County, you know, is that sheriff going to know about it? Will his deputies know? No.
So hearing that, is it a 1, a 2?
Rachel here, I'd like to see it as a 1 or at the lowest a 2.
Okay. I'll put it as a 1 or 2 for now, and then you can look at your list. All right. Your next one is your statewide needs assessment. And so this is the one where you wanted to conduct a needs assessment of older adults in the state using data from multiple systems. So you wanted to get DCF and KDADS and everyone involved. Knowing that it's something that you're going to have to collaborate against with a lot of different data systems, I do want to make sure I'm capturing kind of the intention of this. It's all to prevent A&E, and it's a needs assessment to see kind of what is necessary and what data is being collected. This differs, I want to make sure this differs from the elder count book because that is a recommendation from Working Group B. And so maybe having some clarity on the type of data and the needs assessment and the focus of that will be helpful for this group to really iron out. Go ahead, Jan.
I was wondering, up there, the Workforce Clearinghouse, wouldn't the statewide needs assessment be part of that?
So the
I mean-
clearinghouse is really geared towards the workforce and direct care workers and having a place where people who want to hire workers can go and see.
Okay.
Um,
And the background checks.
the statewide needs assessment was more, it's really looking at financial crimes that are happening in the community and assessing, you know, kind of what needs to be in place to prevent exploitations in the future.
Okay.
It doesn't just have to be financially related. It could be other crimes, of course, as
Yeah.
well. But having all of those sources talk together so you have kind of a comprehensive database to really understand what are those A&E issues and how to better prevent them.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean, one other part of the scope that you guys talked about with high impact was it would identify the scope of problems that older adults face and kind of what their needs are and potential next steps, kind of have a framework that the state could use to move forward. If there's a needs assessment done, it gives you some good baseline data and it would find out subpopulations of seniors. Again, I don't know how closely this is from the elder count book because I'm not familiar with the elder count book. So I will lean on you to tell me if it's the same thing or different.
Hina, Bill Persinger here. Let me ask the group, and I'm hoping I'm in the right ballpark, but county by county in Kansas, I'm pretty sure all or most of the counties, and then there's a statewide community health needs assessment. Community health needs assessment. And I do recall that there are quite a few items that might relate to our discussion. So I wonder if I'm not trying to say it's already been done. We probably ought to have something more specific, but I'm not sure that we're looking at a tier 1 or 2 here on the needs assessment. Maybe looking, I mean, lots of data out there on, seniors and healthcare and people's financial situation, demographic trends, gaps in care. So I don't know if it's helpful to say this, but maybe we're looking at 2 or 3 instead of a 1 or 2.
That's from others. You can put up your fingers, 2 or 3. I'm seeing 3s. And then is this more of a strategic importance? So we'll take a couple of years to pull the data together. Okay. All right. Your next one is the financial crime campaign. So that's the one that you have in place to really educate and promote awareness. It's very targeted, 60+ prevention. So is this something that's immediate action or strategically important? Something that could be done next year, or would it take a couple of years to put together marketing and getting those players together?
Didn't. Immediate action.
Okay. Anyone disagree with that?
This is Camille Russell and the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And I'm just sitting here thinking, it's like, I'm thinking about the mail that I opened last week. And I had several things in my mailbox that had different types of information about scams. Because I'm in this role, I maybe have read it a little bit better than the general public does. So I think it's happening, but I'm not sure that we don't need to look at something more unique. There's a lot of it happening, but it's not getting to the target audience, I'm afraid. So I'm not sure that we don't need to have some more study on what that needs to look like, or have more input from others.
So your exact recommendation language is initiate an older adults age 60+ targeted prevention campaign about financial crime. So it's not studying it, it's really targeting that, developing that media campaign or outreach campaign. Is that something you'd want as a mechanism under something else? Or keep it still standalone? Or modify the language? That's the other option if it sounds like that's already being done, but it's not reaching.
Hina, Bill Persinger, folks, I wonder if, I'm certainly in favor of this because I get stuff too. I know, lots of seniors and, of course we all do. I wonder if narrowing this down to, how to recognize emails, mailings, phone calls, and texts as suspicious. Maybe it relates to a financial crime targeted at, folks who are older. Maybe it's just the everyday, sort of baloney that appears in your, on your computer screen. I do know that lots of folks, pay attention to their email because it somebody's paying attention to them, and in a way it's like, oh, look, I've got some email. So maybe just some part of this could be just focusing on how to recognize phishing, scams, too good to be true, or in the converse, recognizing what's legitimate, So I know, the Medicare, Social Security folks mainly only do business to individuals in one route, or rambling a bit, I'm sorry, but not unimportant.
thank
I
you.
just, wonder if there's a bigger education awareness kind of campaign, or, that we could focus on.
Thank you. Carter, did you have a comment about this?
Yeah, just adding on to what Camille and Bill have said, I think there's definitely outreach being done, but the hard part that I feel many have is knowing what to do after you become a victim, or after you're repeatedly
Mhm.
getting calls. You know, I know personally, I work off my cell phone quite often, and I get potential spam calls 5 to 10 times a day some days.
Yep.
And heck, I walk by our front lobby and there's a 65-year-old man, and he has a great sense of humor, and he always picks up, "Hello, this is John. I'm not there," because people telemarket to him even. So, you know, I know I hear about it a lot from a lot of different people, people with parents at home who've reached out to me with questions before. I just don't know, you know, maybe Camille's receiving some stuff that, you know, should be a little bit more widespread or invested into, and maybe what those people are doing might be on the right track of what we're trying to do, and could just use a boost in the arm of our support, if that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead, Ernie.
Ernie with AARP. I think a couple of things is making people feel comfortable in reporting instead of hiding it away, and then law enforcement and other entities to understand that it's really a crime for people or to people, so they know how to investigate and follow up with folks.
Sure. Go ahead, Camille.
Ernie, thank you. That is exactly the kind of, I think, education that we really need to do. That's, I guess what I was saying is I think they're saying that this shouldn't happen. And it almost does make people go underground when it does happen because they're embarrassed. So maybe the education is it can happen to anybody, and here's some things that you can do when it does. And that educates people that it happens and to be looking for it. Also, our accountability when it does happen. So we're back to that training and helping law enforcement again recognize it and address it. It becomes prevention, and us not addressing it is what can allow it to have grown in some senses the way it has. So we need to all work together. Thanks.
So are you comfortable with keeping it as a standalone recommendation then, or did you want this nested more under the previous education related training?
Where did
Carter Olson, administrator here. I have a question. Maybe Ernie and Camille, you guys could help me. So who do you report these people to? Who are, I mean, like, how do you remedy these problems currently? Because I guess I'm not to sound completely clueless, but I guess I am kind of completely clueless on, you know, our local law enforcement in Cloud County would probably laugh it off if I called them and said, "Hey, I've got this phone number that continually calls one of my residents with dementia asking them for money." You know, what is the resource that we're recommending people use, I guess?
This is Camille, and this long-term care ombudsman. I don't think the phone call in and of itself is necessarily against the law, but if someone is exploited, that being reported and followed up with and advocated to be addressed is what is really, really important. And letting the person who was the victim of that know that this happens this can happen to anyone.
Okay. Okay. I understand what you're saying now. Sorry. I'm just this is a little bit outside of something I have experience with, and I appreciate you guys for, you know, letting me be a part of the discussion.
This is Ernie with AARP. Also, we have the Attorney General's multiple discipline, I can't say it, disciplinary teams that was created across the state to investigate and review these accusations. I just think it's important, as Camille said, that one, the person doesn't feel like they're the victim, even though they are, that they're supported, and two, that people, when they are reported or the event is reported, that is taken seriously. So an education campaign across the board. So it's not your fault. These people are slicker and changing every minute. So, and then how do we support and deal with, whether it's financial or whatever it is?
Thank you. And Rachel, did you have a comment? Otherwise, I think the intention has been captured of this. I think we need to think about how you want to tier it after. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I think our district attorney down here does a good job of getting press releases out. So media picks up when there is a new trend, but serving on a community bank board as well. You know, every month when we have our board meetings, we go over suspicious activity reports. And the clever schemes that are out there, the bankers know about it, and those reports make it into the FBI's hands. And so it would be nice if, tying back into some of the other comments, if we could be, or law enforcement, I guess, as well, you know, both on the state and federal level, could be more proactive in getting the message out as to today's scams and yesterday's scams, so that people can be on the lookout for it. And they are getting more and more and more clever.
I appreciate that. So that's why it's a recommendation that you have in here. You definitely said it would be easy to do and it would have a high impact. So knowing that, how would you like to tier this recommendation? Put up fingers. I'm seeing some twos. Yeah. All right. I see agreement there. All right. Your next one is funding your CMHCs. This is a pretty long recommendation. I can show it to you or you can remember it, but it's you know, having that position in there, making sure there's a coordinator there that an older adult can go to and get these mental health services, and strengthening that. The ease of implementation is a 2 though, because it will take some funding and lift of coordination, but the high impact is a 9. So knowing this, firstly, is this something that can be done in the next year or two, or is this something that'll take some time to really get going? And I'll lean on Bill for this, knowing it's in his world.
You know, yes, Bill Persinger here. Thank you, and I sure appreciate the support for, you know, the behavioral aspects of our conversation. You know, we're talking about, you know, computer skills and people's awareness, and you know, there's lots of these factors where, you know, one's behavioral health plays into it. You know, the capacity to recognize a scam is in some ways dependent upon one's, you know, mental frame of mind. And our conversation about psychosocial medications, I think funding a couple of pilot programs could happen fairly immediately. I don't know if Chrissy is on with us today. I don't think so, but she has mentioned that in the past. That could probably be done within current assets at the state level. I'm not sure about that. It wouldn't be super expensive, and could sure, you know, some folks could sure help get a pilot underway. I don't know if we need to further define a pilot versus, you know, and then funding ongoing services, because, you know, we're not going to know the results of a pilot. I mean, we all kind of intuitively know, gosh, if we had geropsychiatric specialists, prescribers and therapists and case managers, that'd be a great thing. But what does that look like? How's that get done in Sherman County versus, Johnson County? I think, you know,
So Bill,
this,
not to cut you off at all, but I did want to share that High Plains, I shared this with Working Group B last week.
right.
High Plains actually already has some services in place and are working on a telemedicine campaign. So
Excellent.
you may have a few places that you could leverage what they've done in those areas. They actually have something set up at the health department. The issues and barriers they've run into is Medicare versus Medicaid billing codes and what you're
Yep.
allowed to do where. But they're developing some workarounds around that as well. And so just to kind of talk about your pilot phase of it, you do have a Western CMHC that is trying a few different things. And so you could leverage that knowledge. And so
that's
knowing,
that's very important too. Yeah, I agree with. I just think that to get this implemented across the state, if we decide to go that, it's going to be a longer term goal. It's going to be a heavier lift, some really good outcomes. And so I think there's kind of two focus: the short term, you know, how can we learn from what we're doing? Can we start another pilot or two? That can be done pretty easily. All of that though is, I mean, it's still a tough hiring market. It's improving a little bit, but a very tough hiring market. And so even a pilot for 2 or 3 years is going to be, you know, a hiring challenge.
so is this more of a 3? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it's probably a 2 or a 3.
Thoughts from others?
Carter Olson, administrator. I second what Bill says.
A 2 or 3?
Yes.
Well,
Which one
It's a very difficult hiring market. I mean,
could have?
it's really, I just voicing, I second the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, the community mental health center chief executive in me goes, oh, this is a one, please. But
Yes.
being practical about it and knowing that a lot of other things going on, you know, and there are some initiatives out there already, to your point, Hina and Hayes and other places I'm aware of. You know, if the group
okay.
wants to go with the three, I wouldn't be, you know, I understand where that's at. Doesn't mean we
Other?
can't go, you know, do a pilot or two, even immediately.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Ernie with AARP. Question for Bill. Wasn't there wasn't there a discussion early on in one of the groups about mapping the CMHCs and
So that mapping is already in Working Group B. It's part of
Okay.
their recommendation, and we've also added your provider list to the recommendation. So that is already on the list.
thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Ernie. Thank you. Yes, I'd forgotten about that.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep it as a 2 or 3 for now, and we'll keep going. So the next one
Tina,
is,
Bill Persinger, let's
ahead.
just go ahead and do a 3 unless the group objects. Like I
Does
say,
anyone object to a 3?
that doesn't mean we can't do a pilot here and there. Right
Okay.
away.
We'll move it. All right. So next we have Charlie's bill. This is the language for this was changed last time to reflect what the intent of the bill, which is ensure the right of residents and their representatives to appeal involuntary transfers and discharges from evictions. So this was something that's strategically important. Ease of implementation is a 4 and high impact is an 8. And per the survey, it was a tier 2. Everyone agree to this or any edits to this? See some thumbs ups, agreement? All right. The next one is decision-making assistance. This is another task force legislation, another bill that was on about enacting supported decision-making agreements for providing a statutory framework for adults who want decision-making assistance. And so this one was another one of strategic importance, ease of implementation at a 5, high impact at an 8, and at tier 3. Any edits to this?
Jan Kimbrell Silverhair, I would say it needs to be tier 2 because so is the Charlie's bill. I just think that people need help. They need to be able to get it when they get it as soon as possible. So a 2.
Any disagreement with the 2?
This is Rachel,
Sarah?
and I just have a question, and Jan, you might know the answer to that. Isn't there a supported decision-making bill pending in the legislature right now?
It didn't pass, Rachel. And so that's why the recommendation is still here to pass that legislation in the next legislative session.
Well, I mean, if we've got a bill that's pending, is that really strategic importance, or is that something that we want the legislature to really take
Sure.
note of in its next session?
You want me to change it to immediate action?
Jan, Camille, I haven't been following that legislation closely enough to.
This is Camille, and I think that it's correct to change that to immediate action. And I think some of the hesitance is just so the large mass is not understanding. It's a foreign thing in thinking to them. I think as we do more person-centered thinking training too, it will help
Thank you.
this decision-making, supported decision-making process. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Terrific. All right.
Representative Esau here. Keep in mind, all the bills have to start over this time. So if we really do want the legislature to consider it, mentioning it as legislation we'd like to see happen is probably a good idea. So it doesn't get lost in all
Please.
the newness of everything next year.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. All right. Now we are on to your last topic, adult care home surveys and fines. These are all marked as immediate action, and most of them were tier 1. So you're going to have to make some decisions here. The first one is on mandated reporting. This is one you wanted to revisit after the last meeting. We do have some updated guidance that we've received. There is no federal mandate that we saw on CNAs being mandated reporters. However, the following states list CNAs as mandated reporters: Alaska, Arizona, Maine, Rhode Island, Colorado, Connecticut, Idaho, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, Ohio, and Virginia. So as for our neighbors, it's Colorado and Iowa that have this type of legislation. If someone else has further information about the federal mandate, definitely let us know. But looking at the American Bar and a few other groups that have pulled this type of data, we didn't see anything in there. And so at this point, the recommendation is to amend the state law to add CNAs and home health aides as mandated reporters. And this wouldn't be in alignment, though, with the federal mandate, unless someone can give me that. And I don't know if, Leanne, you guys have this federal mandate either, but this was a quick research check that our group did.
This is Camille, the long-term.
Yeah.
So I absolutely support us putting this in as a state law that the CNAs are mandated reporters, and that will help, I believe, the nursing home industry be in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. I think that's where you will find where that is referenced. Not so all employees, not necessarily just CNAs.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Then we will take a look at the ACA and see kind of where that's put in. All right, then we can take a look at that. So then knowing that it's something that was stated for immediate action, something that could be in the next legislative session perhaps, ease of implementation at a 5, potential for high impact at a 5, and tiered at 2. Any changes to that? Everyone's good with that? All right, the next one you have is multidisciplinary surveyors. And so Kansas will add non-nursing professionals to the survey teams for adult care homes and consider those models of mixed professionals for regional teams. This is another one that was told could be fairly quick with immediate action, pretty easy to implement, high potential for impact, and tiered at 1. Any edits to that? Looking at your group of 5 recommendations, is that the tier 1 recommendation you want to keep? Seeing nothing. The next one is technical assistance. This one is for KDADs to create and fund a technical assistance department or some position that long-term care facilities can access and help with like regulatory compliance, developing quality improvement, implementing person-centered practices, and kind of writing those sustainable sustainable plans of correction. Again, this was another one that was immediate action, maybe tougher to implement because you will need to add that position, but potential for high impact. How about this one? Is this a 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah, 2.
I'm seeing more 2s. All right. Next one is corrective plans. So this is KDADs using directed plans of correction and education as a remedy for infractions, allowing that system level implementation that's meaningful and sustainable. This one also immediate action, pretty easy to implement, potential for high impact is an 8 as well. Keep this as a 1 or a 1, 2, or 3.
Bill Persinger, Topeka, I'd like to encourage, comments from, people who, work in the area of gerontology, which is, each of you in your own way, of course, but, people like, Carter or, advocates, maybe someone comment. I understand the position of a 1, but I know that we can't have everything be a 1. So, I could see the next one, the website may be becoming a 2 or a 3, but we may get down to a choice here between having more surveyors or having some change in the way we see or operate with corrective plans.
This is Camille, State Ombudsman, and the corrective plans may be a 2 for the simple purpose that there are some rules around the corrective action plans and federal surveyors.
Right.
federal surveys. So I think that may be a little more complicated than what, so I'm going to say, I would say go to 2 on the corrective plans, my opinion.
Thank you. And that's the wisdom I was looking for. Thank you, Camille. Maybe there are others that want to comment as well.
This is Rachel, and I really wonder whether this is an immediate action item. I mean, it would be nice to have it as an immediate action, but it sounds like we need to do some spade work before
Well said.
we look at it.
So change it to a strategic
Well said.
importance. Really think about, yeah. And then I'm kind of hearing that this one might be a strategic importance with the website. I don't know if you saw Deborah Zare's comments this morning on what she saw with the CMS site. Would you like me to read those, or did you have a chance to look at them?
Hina, would you read them? I know they're not lengthy. I looked at them, but I could not recite them here without opening up that email. So it would be helpful if you could.
Sure. So what she sent was the CMS Nursing Home Care Compare public website. What her notes were is Care Compare is updated on the last Wednesday of every month, and through quality measures only update, although quality measures only update on the quarterly basis. So the last Wednesday of every quarter. Surveyors have a certain period of time to upload survey results into the system. About 70 days is what she thought. So even though Care Compare updates monthly, it might take a while before the survey is available and the health inspection ratings changes. She said she wasn't in favor of creating a separate or duplicative rating system at the state level. However, it makes sense that there is a Care Compare link on the KDAD's website. So this is one that I will take you back to your recommendation so you see it, because you had a few parts to this. This one was to develop a publicly accessible state website. It was really looking at providing some robust information on there, including kind of which MCOs are kind of serve that facility, you know, what the quality measures are in place, and really re-implementing that exemplary care program is what this group was excited about. And then the other piece was looking at reviewing nursing facilities' financial health during the survey. So thoughts on continuing with this adult care home survey website and perhaps it linking to CMS and not doing that duplicative work, but still doing the other part of it with the exemplary care program and the facility's financial health. And let me know if there's any language changes you want to consider as well.
This is Camille, State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And as important as I think getting to something like this and having more transparency and more information available, I think we have some work to do to figure out what that should be, where it should go, and how that is done. So I'm not looking at that as an immediate action to do it well.
Okay. So
Well
it sounds like that'll be something that's strategically important. So it could take a little time to really brainstorm to see what that needs to look like. So ease of implementation was at a 3, high impact at a 7. Knowing kind of what, your comments, how would you tier this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going back to the, to the ease. It might, 3 was, do we want to keep that 3 there?
Do you see it being harder or easier?
This is Camille. It does seem like there's parts of this that should just be very easy, like the link to the federal site. And so but to really, for us to really have something that is a state resource, it is going to be harder.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
So keep it at a 3?
It probably should raise a little bit. I'm with Bill.
4 or 5?
I think it's going to take a lot of buy-in, and that takes time.
Okay.
On the messaging, and the target audience, and.
So are you looking at a 2 or 3? 2? 2? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to show this to you in a different way. been trying to build this as we go. So taking a look at this,
Oh,
we've got,
nice.
yeah, that way you see what's in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, so you can make some decisions now. So take a look at your tier 1. Are there any that you think could push to tier 2 or 3, or are those really all the tier 1 that you definitely want to recommend to the task force? And you can keep this. This is your recommendation list.
This is Camille. Didn't we move the adult care home survey website to a?
Oh, sorry. We moved that to 2. I have it in 2 places. I apologize.
It's okay.
Good catch.
Yeah, great catch. Sorry, I'm kind of doing it simultaneously, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're doing it. I couldn't do this. I just don't have that kind of.
Here's 2 though that might go to a 2. You guys had background checks and maybe the A&E training possibly going to 2. I'm going to move this down really quick so you guys see it all. And Deborah, you just joined the call. I wanted to make sure you heard that the adult care home survey website, they will link to the CMS website, but they want to still keep the exemplary care program and financial health and MCO related information there.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Bill Persinger.
Mhm.
Folks, can we take those couple of items in tier 1 that also could be a tier 2? Just go ahead and move them over to tier 2.
Any
Comments,
disagreement?
Discussion on that.
Okay.
Then we can get a look at it then and debate it. I'm not trying to stop the debate because we probably have we just have a couple minutes left, of course, but that'll give us a quick visual.
Yep.
I think we're slated for an hour this morning.
You have about 3 minutes left. So you have about 6 recommendations in tier 1. If you're comfortable with those 6, keep them as is. Take a look at your tier 2 and see if there's any you want to move to tier 3.
Camille, I've got a question for you on the abuse any training. Do you think to me, it does make some sense that the person-centered practices lead the way in advance of that training? Am I thinking about that right?
Deborah, I agree. We actually advertise that the person-centered practices training actually is a training to prevent, identify, and create a culture that would, to prevent abuse, neglect, exploitation. I will say though, this abuse, neglect, exploitation training, in my mind, is that training that makes everyone in that building aware not only of the identifying it to report, but their requirement to report. So it's kind of 2 different pieces, but I do believe that the person-centered practices being the first step and the other being the second step. And Deborah, I think we discussed before you got on to that there's quite a bit, of abuse, neglect, and exploitation training for the purpose that I mentioned about their requirement to report. So we want to prevent it. It's what we all want to do.
Perfect. So it sounds like your tier 1 you're pretty set with. How about tier 2? Any that you want to push to tier 3 because you may need something initially in place, or it may just take a little longer? Go ahead, Ernie.
Ernie with AARP, just a clarification on the tier 2 mandated reporting. Was that the CNA's reporting?
That's the CNAs. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I can change that to mandated reporters if that's easier.
That's an idea.
We can change that handle. You're good with this? Kind of keeping more in tier 2, a few in tier 3, and your tier 1 list? And you may have the chance to revisit this.
Bill Persinger, and I think you've encouraged us to do this several times, but are there any any items that can be combined or collapsed together in any tier 1, 2, or 3.
Well, we have Workforce Clearinghouse on here twice on tier 1.
So we do, hold on, sorry.
And decision-making assistance is on here twice.
Well, thank you for catching me.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's
That's
just
what happens.
a cursor problem, Hina. Like I
There
said,
you go.
I'm glad you're doing that and not me. It'd be a train wreck.
I don't have my support staff today to kind of double check me, so I appreciate you guys doing it.
There you go.
We're at time now, though. Any others in tier 2 that you'd want to maybe move over to tier 3? Or are you comfortable with this list? You have a solid list of tier 1 with 5 recommendations.
Folks, I know that if you have ideas along the way, it's best to route those to one person, that being Hina, correct, Hina?
Yes.
We want to avoid group emails, reply alls, want to avoid editorial comments, things like that.
Yes.
Let's keep it to the facts and keep it to our single point of contact, Hina.
Thank you. And so just so you know, next steps. So I'm going to take this list of recommendations and how you've tiered it and put it into your report. You'll see the report kind of the week of July 4th. At some point that week, it'll be released out to all working groups. So you'll have a chance to see all of the recommendations submitted by working group A, B, and the workforce subgroup in the report. You will meet next on July 26th at 9 a.m. to ratify this report. Any changes at that point should be pretty technical. However, if you wanted to move some recommendations around from one tier to the next, or the federal government does something in the next month, we can definitely make edits as needed based on that. And so keep that in mind, but that would be your last meeting. And then the report would be ratified and sent to the task force by the end of July. So that when the task force meets next, they have a couple weeks to review the report before they meet and make final decisions. All right. Any questions about that? Meanwhile, as you mull over this list, and I will send you out some really minimal notes, just so you know, it'll pretty much be sending these charts out to you so you have a chance to look at them and mull over them. Then you can always send me an email, send it only to me. As Bill said, no serial communication is allowed. So please only send comments to me and I will compile them. Well, I thank you all for your time this morning. Thank you for the grace of 2 minutes just to tell you about next steps, and I will see you in July now. So I hope you have a wonderful summer.
I know that I speak to everybody when I say we appreciate you and the team very much.
Thank you. It's
Absolutely.
been lovely
Thank you so
working with
much.
this working group. Take care.
Outstanding bunch. Thank you.